Quarantined Experiment 29. Experiment 29 is the reason the doctor's status was changed from capture on site to kill on site. After 29, there is no longer any chance for redemption. After Experiment 16's capture and interrogation, the agency was able to discern the doctor's location. The two had been in contact, the doctor receiving updates on 16's development and emerging abilities. Tracking the data brought an investigative team to a small town in Wyoming. Unfortunately, the doctor had already moved on, leaving tragedy in his wake. Agents found the residents of the town mostly dead. The only ones that were still alive were now Experiment 29, all of the children in the town, and all under the age of 12. The town itself was covered in a weird, pasty white webbing. Every surface was coated, even the ground. Every now and then there would be a white, rock-like formation that rose from the surface. Whatever the doctor did killed all the adults and infected all the children, causing a mutation similar to that of Experiment 7. Experiment 29 retained the head of a child, though all of their hair fell out. The skin became pale, with purple veins visible through the skin. Although 29 wasn't quite as misshapen as 7, each was a far cry from human, walking on two grasshopper-like legs. At first, the agents thought the children were aware, similar to 16, but it wasn't long before the truth revealed itself. The doctor had left no survivors. The Experiment 29 creatures were not able to communicate, though they could vocalize. It took some time for the agents to realize that the child-headed creatures were merely parroting phrases left over from their original host's memories. The children had expired as effectively as the town's adults had. They didn't understand English, and the words they spoke were just an effort to lure in other organisms. As the agents called in a full quarantine team, they took their time to observe the 29 creatures to try to suss out their abilities. Similar to 7, 29 was highly infectious. Even the ground they walked upon developed a weird fungal growth that drained the nutrients from the ground and eventually sprouted weird, mushroom-like growths. This was what led the agents to realize what Experiment 29, the creatures that had taken over the town, really were. The true creature is actually the fungus that covered almost every inch of the town. The animated, child-faced things that called out for people and tried to bump into things? Those were spores. The agents were lucky, very lucky, that they followed the protocol for anything involving the doctor and came into town wearing full antiviral gear, gas masks, body gloves, and a full hazmat suit, because contact with the spores would cause their heads to pop and spread more of the fungus into the surrounding environment. It would be better to think of the human-looking heads as a sort of seriously disturbing mushroom cap. Those cute-looking eyes are more or less just markings and not at all functional. Those things are blind, and that's why they stumble around randomly. Their fragility also makes sense in light of this discovery. Why bother being hardy when the goal is to spread as much of yourself as possible? It doesn't take much at all for those awkwardly jointed grasshopper legs to topple, causing the former children to fall to the ground and take damage, triggering further spread of the virus. Not only is sight absent, but all sensory apparatus is just for show. They stumbled past the agents time and again, completely oblivious to sound, heat, or any other stimulus, randomly talking about different things. It was an act of mimicry, and probably how most of the adults were killed and consumed by the fungus. Sentimentality and grief just added to the tragedy. How could the doctor even conceive of this, let alone carry it out? There cannot be any morality or goodness left in a man who can undertake something of this level of cruelty. Soon the containment team arrived and the town was fenced off. It was just in time as the containment team discovered several of the spores making their awkward, stumbling way out of town. Heeding the warning from the investigating field agents, the containment team didn't hesitate to put down the chattering fungus spores. Proving their mindlessness, the spores did not react to the deaths of their fellow organisms. They just kept on rambling as they shambled forward. A more intense search of the town was undertaken after the lockdown was put in place. First, to locate any potential survivors who may have somehow escaped the infection. None were to be found. A message written on the outside of a bank vault kindled some hope, but that hope was dashed upon investigation. The teams hadn't arrived in time, and the survivor had died of starvation. It wasn't a major town, with a population of around 3,000. A full week of searching yielded no results. Not a single soul remained alive. While the search was going on, the containment team set up measures to prevent the outbreak from breaching the town's borders. The surrounding areas were carefully searched, and none of the spores from Experiment 29 were found. One of the spores was carefully bagged and sealed into a very sturdy, secure container and sent to the nearest base for study. After that, the town's containment was triggered. First, a massive cloud of fungicidal chemicals were dumped upon the town from above. Every surface touched by the powder began to sizzle as the strong chemicals did their work to cleanse the infection. That alone was not enough. Even if it was, the shell of the town remained as evidence of what had occurred. So the town was set afire with a heavy napalm mixture the agency reserves for truly large-scale erasures. Correctly applied and properly supervised, the resulting inferno can burn for 7 days and 7 nights. Everything in that town was eradicated, and the entire area was burned down to the bedrock. And even that bedrock itself was scorched. The containment team did their jobs well, controlling the burn to keep it going and ensuring that nobody approached the town. Just like that, with 1 week of work, the entire town was wiped off the map. Files were changed and orders were given to our government contacts. All that remains is to locate the doctor.